3 years ago, my brother Jason passed away, leaving a deep void in our lives. In the midst of mourning, a situation arose that added a layer of complexity to our grief. Jason's widow, Lori, opted to keep a necklace he had given her, a piece of our family's history that had belonged to our great-grandmother. This necklace held no significant monetary value but was priceless in terms of sentimental value. We hoped it would remain within our family for generations to come, serving as a tangible link to our heritage. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, and I found myself confronted with a surprising message from Lori on social media. She expressed her struggles since Jason's passing, revealing significant debts that burdened her even after his death. In a somewhat jarring turn of events, she proposed selling the cherished necklace back to me for a sum far exceeding any reasonable appraisal of its value, which I knew to be around $150. My initial reaction was one of disbelief and indignation. It felt as though Lori was attempting to capitalize on our family's loss and history. The idea of purchasing back an item that should have remained within our family without any monetary exchange felt morally wrong to me. Moreover, it seemed to cheapen the memory of my brother and our great-grandmother, reducing them to commodities in a transaction. Despite my refusal, tensions within the family escalated. My mother, coming from a place of empathy, suggested I should have engaged in negotiations with Lori, perhaps finding a middle ground. However, my father, who shared the sentiment of preserving family heirlooms, supported my decision to stand firm. What troubled me most was the idea of condoning what felt like an act of extortion. It wasn't merely about the necklace itself, but about the principle behind it. How could I allow Lori to profit from what I perceived as a breach of trust? As the debate rages on within our family, I find myself grappling with doubts. Was my refusal to repurchase the necklace a stance of integrity or a stubborn refusal to find a compromise? Should I have navigated the situation differently considering Lori's circumstances? These questions weigh heavily on my mind as I reflect on the complexity of family dynamics and the value we attribute to our shared history. If Lori had opted to sell the necklace elsewhere, there would likely be criticism directed towards her for not offering it to the family first. However, the situation at hand isn't one of extortion. Rather, it's a matter of bargaining. While the true value of the necklace remains unknown, its sentimental significance is undeniable and should be factored into any appraisal. Regarding the issue with my sister, it's far from trivial. The incident involving my wedding dress years ago left a lasting scar on our relationship. Despite the passage of time, the hurt and resentment linger. When she approached me to borrow my new dress for her own wedding, it stirred up all those old emotions. My new dress represents a fresh start, a symbol of hope and happiness for my upcoming marriage. I've invested not only financially but emotionally in this dress, envisioning it as the embodiment of my dreams. To lend it to my sister, who played a role in destroying my previous dress, is simply too much to ask. I understand her financial constraints, but I cannot overlook the breach of trust that occurred in the past. It's not about selfishness. It's about protecting something that holds immense significance to me. My refusal may seem harsh to some, but it's a boundary I feel compelled to uphold for my own well-being. Despite my explanation, my sister's reaction was one of anger and accusation. She invoked the notion of family loyalty and support, but these words ring hollow in the face of past actions. While our parents and some friends may see my decision as overly severe, they likely haven't experienced the same betrayal that I have. In seeking outside perspective, I'm torn between the desire to maintain familial harmony and the need to protect myself from further hurt. It's a delicate balance, and one that weighs heavily on my mind as I navigate this challenging situation. Regarding my sister's plea for my dress, it's not a matter of holding onto grudges but rather protecting something deeply personal to me. While she may have apologized for the past, the sincerity of those apologies has always been questionable. Past actions have left a significant impact on our relationship, and it's not unreasonable for me to be hesitant about entrusting her with something as precious as my wedding dress. The outpouring of support from others who see my refusal as justified has been reassuring. It's clear that many understand the value and sentiment attached to such a garment, and they recognize that my decision is not rooted in selfishness but rather self-preservation. On the other hand, the incident involving my mother-in-law and my daughter is deeply troubling. Entrusting her with the care of my infant was meant to provide me with a much-needed respite, but instead, I found my daughter neglected and distressed upon waking from my nap. The fact that my mother-in-law had seemingly disappeared without attending to my daughter's needs is alarming and unacceptable. Discovering that my phone was missing, along with the baby monitor being unplugged, only added to my anxiety and frustration. It's a breach of trust that has shaken me to my core, especially considering the vulnerability of my daughter's situation. In both instances, I'm left questioning the reliability and trustworthiness of those closest to me. Whether it's safeguarding cherished possessions or ensuring the well-being of my child, the need for accountability and responsibility is paramount. Moving forward, I'll need to reassess these relationships and establish clearer boundaries to prevent similar incidents from occurring in the future. I returned to the kitchen and spotted my mother-in-law on the back porch, chatting away on my phone. I approached her, questioning why she had my cell phone and how long she had left my daughter crying unattended. I was baffled to see her engaged in a casual phone call while my baby was clearly distressed in the other room. I demanded an explanation for why she had unplugged the baby monitor. Her response only added to my frustration. She claimed she had taken the call to prevent it from disturbing my rest and unplugged the monitor to avoid waking me if the baby cried. However, it was evident that my daughter had been crying for an extended period. Her swollen eyes and distressed state were clear indicators that she had been left unattended for far too long. I swiftly asked my mother-in-law to leave, emphasizing the severity of the situation and her failure to fulfill her responsibilities. Despite her attempts to justify her actions, I stood my ground, prioritizing the well-being of my child above all else. My husband's reaction to the situation surprised and disappointed me. Instead of acknowledging the gravity of the neglect our daughter experienced, he sided with his mother, shifting blame onto me for making her feel foolish. It's disheartening to feel gaslight and invalidated in a situation where my primary concern was the safety and care of our child. The bottom line is clear. My mother-in-law's actions were unacceptable, and I refuse to downplay the seriousness of the situation. Whether or not my daughter will be fine after crying for 10 minutes is beside the point. What matters is that my mother-in-law neglected her responsibilities and breached the trust placed in her. In no way am I the idiot for demanding accountability and ensuring the safety of my child. The fact that my mother-in-law spent 40 minutes on the phone with my husband right outside while neglecting her duties didn't come as a surprise. She has a history of keeping my husband on lengthy calls, even when he's at home, claiming she barely knows him anymore due to his work schedule. It's frustrating to see her prioritize her conversations over responsibilities, especially when it involves neglecting her child. Regarding my husband's reaction, it's disappointing that he didn't support me. Instead, he chose to defend his mother's actions, which only adds to the frustration. He needs to realize that he married me, not his mother, and he should prioritize supporting our family unit over his mother's whims. On a separate note, my recent birthday dinner plans were disrupted due to my husband's habitual tardiness. Despite knowing the importance of the occasion, he chose to prioritize working on his car, causing us to leave without him. While I understand occasional lateness, especially for family events, this was a significant dinner reservation that I had been eagerly anticipating for weeks. Leaving without him was a tough decision, but I felt it was necessary to avoid losing our reservation. While my father supported my decision, my kids were understandably upset about their father's absence at dinner. I don't believe I acted wrongly in leaving without my husband. His consistent tardiness, especially for important events, has become a recurring issue that needed to be addressed. It's crucial for him to understand the value of respecting others' time and commitments, especially when it comes to family occasions. I find it puzzling how my husband's time management would be impacted by such trivial matters, unless there's an underlying reason for his chronic lateness. Nonetheless, I stand firm in my decision to leave without him. Waiting any longer would have jeopardized our reservation, and subsequently, my birthday celebration. Upon returning home, I confronted him about his behavior, making it clear that his actions were unacceptable. In hindsight, perhaps I should have been more assertive in preventing him from starting his car project so close to our departure time. It's evident that his chronic lateness requires a more proactive approach, rather than passive tolerance. While neurological conditions like ADHD may contribute to such behavior, it doesn't excuse it. Ultimately, he needs to take responsibility for his actions and make a concerted effort to change. It's frustrating to witness my sister's resistance to my nephew's chosen name, Sky. Despite her objections, he has embraced it, and it's become widely accepted among his peers and teachers. While my sister may find it challenging to accept, it's essential to respect my nephew's autonomy and identity. Denying him the right to choose his own name only serves to undermine his sense of self. In both instances, it's crucial to address underlying issues and promote open communication. Whether it's my husband's chronic lateness or my sister's resistance to my nephew's chosen name, fostering understanding and acceptance is key to resolving conflicts and promoting harmony within our relationships. His name is Skyla, and Sky is the most common nickname for it, with Killa being possible but not any better. My nephew, now a young teen, has requested the family to call him Sky as well. We respect his wishes and address him accordingly. He confided in me that he wanted to make this request when he was 5 but refrained knowing his mom would strongly oppose it. However, he no longer cares that she dislikes Sky. I admire him for asserting what makes him happy. My sister is now distressed that everyone, including her husband, calls him Sky. She has vehemently opposed the use of Sky, insisting that his name is Skyla and he should refer to himself as such to avoid confusion. She argued that shortening his name isn't necessary and forbade him from introducing himself by the nickname. However, he feels Sky is more fitting than Skyla now, and she needs to accept it. In our conversation, I reminded my sister that she can't dictate the name her son chooses to introduce himself with, especially when it's a common variation of his full name. I cautioned her that her insistence on this matter could breed resentment in her son. However, she dismissed my input, asserting her right as his mother. In my view, my sister's controlling behavior and disproportionate reaction to this issue are concerning. Her inability to accept her son's chosen name may stem from deeper insecurities or gender-related biases. Ultimately, her resistance to embracing her son's identity may cause more harm than good in their relationship.